picture this for a second, learner. You're sitting at your desk, you're staring at an email chain that is somehow like 64 messages deep.
Oh, yeah, the endless thread.
Right, and you still have absolutely no idea what the actual decision is. Or maybe you're sitting in your third status update meeting of the day.
The dreaded status update.
Exactly, you're looking around the little video grid, and you catch yourself wondering, why is it so incredibly hard for large groups of smart people to just get things done?
Well, it's the universal bottleneck of modern professional life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, everyone listening to this has felt that exact friction.
Yeah, 100%.
But we're going to look at a framework today in this deep dive that suggests your frustration isn't just, a corporate annoyance.
Okay.
It is actually the symptom of a system that has completely outlived its usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a deeply provocative piece by Jack Dorsey and Roloff Botha.
Yeah, titled Block from Hierarchy to Intelligence.
Right. And to set the stakes right out of the gate here, this is not an article about buying your employees a shiny new large language model to help them write those 64 emails faster.
Right, it's not a productivity hack.
No, not at all. They are proposing a ground-up demolition of organizational design. They're arguing that an AI system can act as a company's central nervous system.
Which is a wild concept.
It really is. It permanently replaces the human coordination layer. So the middle managers, the directors, the entire corporate pyramid that we have relied on for literally centuries.
That is just a massive claim because, to understand how AI is going to break the traditional corporate pyramid, we first have to understand why we even built the pyramid in the first place.
Exactly.
And the authors actually take us back 2,000 years to the Roman army.
Right. Which seems like a weird place to start a tech discussion.
Yeah, it really does. But it makes perfect sense when you look at the problem they were trying to solve, right?
It does, because the Romans were dealing with the ultimate scaling problem. How do you coordinate thousands of people across vast geographical distances when your fastest mode of communication is, a guy on a horse?
Right, literally just a dude riding a horse.
Exactly. So through centuries of warfare, they bumped up against a hard biological limit. They discovered that a human brain can only effectively manage and keep track of a very small group of people.
Usually between 3 and 8, right?
Yeah, typically 3 to 8. And we call this the span of control today.
Right. And they built their entire military machine around that specific biological limitation. The fundamental building block of the Roman legion was the contubernium. It was a unit of exactly 8 soldiers. They shared a tent. They shared their cooking equipment. They even shared a single mule to carry their gear.
Very tight-knit group.
Yeah. And they were led by one guy, the decanus.
And from there, the math just kind of cascades upward. So you take 10 of those 8-man units, and you get a century of 80 men led by a centurion.
Right, the centurion.
And then 6 centuries form a cohort. 10 cohorts form a legion of roughly 5,000 soldiers.
It's just nested groups all the way up.
Exactly. Every single layer had a designated commander.
Yeah.
But their primary job wasn't just, swinging a sword on the front lines.
What were they actually doing?
Their job was to aggregate information from the bottom up, synthesize it, and then relay orders from the top down.
Okay, let me throw an analogy at this to see if it tracks for the learner. The modern corporate org chart, so managers reporting to directors who report to VPs, is basically a series of traffic lights on a city grid.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The managers are the traffic lights. They exist to keep cars from crashing into each other, meaning they keep information from getting lost in the chaos.
Right.
But by their very nature, traffic lights inherently slow down the commute. The whole system is designed around the limitation that one person simply cannot process the traffic of 100 direct reports.
That captures the friction perfectly. You are essentially trading speed for order, and that system received a major architectural upgrade much later in 1806.
Okay, from who?
From the Prussian army. So Napoleon had just absolutely decimated the Prussian forces at the Battle of Jena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a disaster. And Prussian military reformers, guys like Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, they realized a fatal flaw in relying on the Roman model alone.
Which was what?
It required a brilliant general at the very top. If the guy at the top made a bad call, the whole pyramid collapsed. They needed a system that functioned effectively, even if the commanders were wildly incompetent.
Which, to be fair, was a real problem back then because military commissions were often just bought by wealthy nobles.
Exactly. It wasn't earned by merit. So the Prussians invent what they called the general staff. They
Ah,
literally created a dedicated class of trained officers whose entire job was to pre-compute decisions.
wait, so they split the workers from the planners?
Exactly. They formalized the split between the line workers,
Yeah.
the infantry actually fighting the battle, and the staff.
Yeah.
The specialized middle layer, sitting behind the lines, managing logistics, drawing maps, routing the information.
So they essentially invented middle management.
They did. They turned warfare into an information routing machine. And it really didn't take long for that military framework to bleed into the business world.
Right, because of the railroads.
Yeah, fast forward to the 1850s, the boom of the American railroads. A superintendent named Daniel McCallum actually draws the first formal organizational chart.
But he didn't do it just because he loved bureaucracy.
No, not at all. He did it because the informal, kind of ad hoc management styles that worked perfectly fine for a 20-mile local train route were failing spectacularly on a 500-mile system.
Yeah, I imagine the stakes get a bit higher.
Much higher.
Yeah.
Information about train schedules wasn't raveling fast enough, and literal train collisions were happening. People were actually dying.
Wow. So McCallum takes the Roman nested hierarchy, combines it with the Prussian staff concept, and just applies it to the railroads to stop the literal train wrecks.
Exactly. And then later on, Frederick Taylor comes in with his scientific management, applying stopwatches to every worker to optimize the output of that pyramid.
You know, when you lay it all out like that, it completely reframes how I view corporate structure. Like, hierarchy isn't inherently about ego or power-hungry executives wanting corner offices.
Right.
It's literally an ancient technology. It's simply an information routing mechanism built to compensate for the limits of the human brain.
That is the crucial takeaway from the historical context.
Yeah.
But we have to look at the other side of the coin here.
Okay.
If this military-style hierarchy was so brilliantly effective at scaling human effort, why have modern companies spent the last 80 years desperately trying to escape it?
Well, because nobody actually likes working in a bureaucracy. It feels slow, it feels disconnected, and it's just frustrating.
True. And the first major stress test of this functional hierarchy happening in a modern context was the Manhattan Project.
During World War II.
Right. Robert Oppenheimer was tasked with solving the implosion problem for the atomic bomb. And he had theoretical physicists, chemists, engineers, military officers all working under an impossibly tight deadline.
And the military brass wanted to use the standard hierarchy, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. They wanted to compartmentalize everyone. Physicists in one box, chemists in another, and information strictly routed up to a commander and then back down.
Right, the traditional Roman way. But Oppenheimer looked at that and realized it would take years to route the physics data up to a manager and back down to the chemistry team.
Exactly. So he forced open collaboration. He created cross-functional teams that completely ignored the chain of command.
He just let the scientists talk directly to each other.
Yes, it was incredibly fast and innovative, but it required a singular genius operating under the intense pressure of a world war to keep it from devolving into total chaos.
Right, and ever since Oppenheimer pulled that off, the business world has just been chasing that ghost. They've been trying to bottle the magic of a flat, fast organization.
Yeah, by 1959, McKinsey is publishing frameworks for matrix organizations.
Okay, let's actually define that for the learner, because matrix organization sounds like a cool sci-fi concept, but it's actually a very specific corporate nightmare.
It really is. A matrix organization is when you decide to give an employee two bosses instead of one.
Seems awful.
It is. You might report to a VP of marketing for your functional skills, but you also report to a product director for the specific project you're working on.
And on paper, I guess that was supposed to balance specialized skill with agile product development.
On paper, yes. In reality, it just created endless turf wars and double the alignment meetings.
Yeah. And the attempts to kill the hierarchy only got more extreme with the tech boom. Like, you look at the giants of the last 20 years. Spotify pioneered the squad model, breaking people into tiny, autonomous, cross-functional teams.
Right.
Zappos went famous for adopting holacracy. That was a system where they literally ripped up manager titles and put people into self-governing, overlapping circles.
That is wild.
Yeah. And Valve, the gaming company, operated with a completely flat structure where desks had wheels and you just rolled your desk to whatever project you wanted to work on.
But notice the pattern with every single one of those experiments. They all hit a wall.
Did they?
Yeah. Spotify eventually quietly reverted back to a more conventional management structure as they grew. Zappos experienced massive employee attrition when they rolled out holacracy because nobody knew who to go to for decisions.
Right.
And Valve found that their flat structure worked wonderfully for a few hundred highly autonomous engineers, but it just couldn't scale into the thousands.
Okay, I am going to push back pretty hard right here.
Go for it.
If some of the most well-funded, brilliant tech companies in the world tried to murder middle management and ultimately failed, if they all ended up reverting back to the Roman model in some form, why are we even talking about this? Why should we believe Block's approach is going to be any different from, the Zappos holacracy disaster?
That's the perfect question, and the answer comes back to the eternal trade-off of the org chart we discussed earlier.
The traffic lights?
Right. If you narrow the span of control so people aren't overwhelmed, you must add more layers. More layers means slower information. The tech experiments of the past failed because they tried to remove the middle managers, the traffic lights, without replacing the underlying routing mechanism.
Ah, so they just took away the lights and let the cars crash.
Exactly. When you take away the manager, the individual contributors suddenly have to spend 40% of their week doing the routing themselves. They burn out from the sheer volume of alignment and communication overhead.
Okay, I see where this is going. Past companies just removed the routing hardware. Dorsey and Botha are saying that right now, for the first time in history, we actually have a technology capable of taking over that routing function completely.
Yes, we have autonomous vehicles that don't need the traffic lights. Block isn't just treating AI as a co-pilot to help an employee code faster within the existing Roman pyramid. They're trying to build the company itself as an intelligence. They use the term mini AGI.
Okay, let's break that down. AGI usually means artificial general intelligence, like a machine that can do any intellectual task a human can do. But what do they mean by a mini AGI?
They mean an intelligence that is completely bounded by the universe of the company. It doesn't need to know how to write poetry or solve quantum physics.
Right.
It just needs to act as a synthetic brain that deeply, perfectly understands every single thing happening inside Block.
But how do you practically build a synthetic brain for a corporation? According to the text, it requires two massive foundational pieces. First, you need a company world model.
Yes.
And Block operates as a remote-first company. The consequence of that is profound because practically every action a worker takes leaves a digital artifact.
That's a huge point.
Right. Every Slack thread discussing a bug, every line of code pushed to a repository, every design mock-up, every financial projection, it's all machine readable.
Compare that to a traditional office. In a normal company, a massive amount of context is lost in hallway conversations or undocumented meetings.
Or just someone dropping by your desk.
Exactly. A middle manager's entire job is to sit in those meetings, absorb the context, and pass it up the chain. But if all the work is natively digital and machine-readable, the AI ingests it continuously.
Wow.
The AI model becomes the omniscient narrator. It constantly knows the state of the business, what projects are blocked, and where resources are sitting idle.
It totally eliminates the giant corporate game of telephone.
It does.
But an AI that just understands the internal company isn't enough, which brings us to the second piece, the customer world model. Because an AI is only as smart as the data feeding it, you need a signal from the outside world telling you what the customer actually wants.
And Dorsey and Botha point out a brilliant truth about customer data. A lot of it is just noise.
Yeah.
People lie on marketing surveys. They say they will buy a premium subscription, and then they don't. They ignore advertisements. But there is one signal that is undeniably honest.
Money.
Money.
When a small business owner takes out a loan, or a teenager sends $20 on Cash App, or a merchant processes a credit card, I mean, they are not lying.
Right.
That transaction is a hard mathematical fact. A Block is processing millions of these ground truth financial realities every single day.
Which feeds the compounding engine at the heart of their thesis. The richer that financial signal, the more accurate their customer world model becomes.
Right.
The better the model understands the customer, the more perfectly it can serve them. Better service leads to more transactions. Those new transactions feed back into the system, creating an even smarter model.
It's a feedback loop.
Exactly. It creates a flywheel of compounding intelligence that a static human hierarchy simply cannot keep up with.
Okay, so If the AI is acting as this omniscient routing system, constantly absorbing internal progress and external financial realities, the actual physical structure of the company has to change.
It has to.
You can't just slap this into a traditional org chart. The text outlines 4 specific pillars of this new AI native organization. And the first pillar completely threw me for a loop. They call it capabilities.
Yeah. So in traditional software company, you have product teams. A team builds the small business loan product from start to finish.
Right.
Block argues against building static products. Instead, they build capabilities, which are atomic financial primitives. Things like a ledger, a payment processor, a lending engine, a payroll calculator.
And the detail that stood out to me, these capabilities have no user interface. They have no buttons, no screens. What does it even mean to build a product with no UI?
Think of it like a commercial kitchen. Capabilities are the raw ingredients in the pantry: flour, butter, sugar, salt. You don't serve a customer a cup of raw flour.
I hope not.
Right. The ingredients just sit there, perfectly refined, heavily regulated, and highly reliable. The second pillar is the world model we just discussed, knowing what the customer is hungry for and knowing exactly what ingredients are in the pantry.
Which brings us to pillar 3, where the actual magic happens, the intelligence layer. This is the chef.
Yeah.
This system proactively looks at the world model, grabs the raw capabilities, and composes a custom solution on the fly.
The example they provide in the piece really grounds this. Imagine a local restaurant using Square to process payments.
Okay.
The intelligence layer, looking at the world model, notices a pattern. This specific restaurant always experiences a tight cash flow crunch right before the slow winter season.
So it spots the problem before the owner even asks for help.
Exactly. And instead of waiting for the restaurant owner to panic and apply for a bank loan, the intelligence layer takes action. It reaches into the pantry. It grabs the lending capability to structure a short-term capital advance.
Wow.
Then it grabs the payments capability to automatically route a percentage of future sales toward repayment. It composes this bespoke financial lifeline and offers it to the owner on their dashboard before the owner even started searching for financing.
Notice what is absent from that process. There was no vice president of lending holding a quarterly planning session to invent a seasonal restaurant relief product.
Exactly.
The intelligence layer simply recognized the reality of the customer's need in real time and snapped the pre-approved compliant capabilities together to solve it. It's seamless.
Now, I have to ask the obvious question here. What happens when the AI chef tries to cook a meal, but an ingredient is missing? Like, what if it spots a customer problem, but the capability doesn't exist in the pantry yet?
That leads directly to the 4th pillar, the interfaces, like the Cash App or Square terminals themselves. When the intelligence layer fails to compose a solution, it generates a failure signal.
This blew my mind. This is the end of the traditional product roadmap.
It really is.
In a normal company, product managers sit in a conference room with a whiteboard, guessing what features the market might want next year based on intuition and focus groups.
Right. A lot of guessing.
But Dorsey and Botha are saying that the failures of the AI to serve a real-time customer need automatically generate the roadmap. The customer's actual real-life problems write the backlog of what needs to be built next.
It completely removes human guesswork from the equation. The reality of the market dictates the work instantly.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room. The question every single person listening is probably screaming at their device right now. What's my job?
Exactly. If the AI system routes the information, composes the solutions, and automatically generates the product roadmap, are humans obsolete? What is your job in this future?
It's a profound shift in human value. In the Roman pyramid, intelligence is scattered among thousands of individual employees, and the human hierarchy's job is to route that intelligence to the top.
Right.
In Bloch's model, the intelligence lives inside the system. The humans are pushed to what they call the edge.
The edge, where the intelligence of the system makes contact with the messy reality of the physical world.
Exactly. The AI model is brilliant at analyzing millions of transactions, but it lacks human intuition. It cannot read the subtle emotional subtext in a room during a negotiation.
Yeah, AI can't read a room.
Right. It doesn't understand nuanced, brand-defining trust dynamics. And most crucially, humans must handle the high-stakes business judgments and the existential risks where the cost of being wrong could literally destroy the company.
So Block is stripping away the middle management titles and normalizing their human workforce into essentially 3 roles. First, you have individual contributors, or ICs. These are the deep specialists, The engineers building those rock-solid capabilities in the pantry or the designers crafting the interfaces.
Right.
But because the AI world model gives them perfect context on what the company needs, they can just build. They don't need a manager to approve their daily tasks.
The second role is fascinating. The DRIs, or directly responsible individuals. These people act as owners of specific cross-cutting problems.
Okay.
So the system might flag that merchant churn in the retail sector is spiking. A DRI is assigned to own that problem for 90 days.
Here is where the mechanics of this system really shine for me. In a traditional company, if I'm tasked with fixing merchant churn, I have to beg a VP of engineering to lend me 3 developers.
Oh yeah, the office politics.
I have to horse trade, deal with all that politics, and wait for the next sprint planning cycle. How does a DRI get resources if there are no VPs to ask?
They interface directly with the intelligence layer. The AI world model knows exactly which engineers have bandwidth. It knows objectively that solving the merchant churn is a higher priority than whatever minor feature engineer A is currently working on.
So it just reassigns them.
Yeah, the system dynamically reallocates those engineers to the DRI. The objective ground truth replaces the political horse trading. Once the problem is solved, the team dissolves, and the DRI moves to a new fire.
That is so efficient. Finally, you have the player coaches. This is kind of the evolution of the middle manager.
Right.
They still build things, they write code or design systems, but their primary human value is mentoring, recruiting, and developing the people around them. They spend their time making humans better at their craft.
And crucially, they do not spend their days in alignment meetings, because alignment just means wasting time getting everyone on the same page. In this model, the AI is the page.
Wow, the AI is the page.
I want everyone listening to audit their own calendar for a moment. Look at your week. How much of your day is spent creating actual value at the edge of your abilities, and how much is spent just acting as a human router?
Right. Forwarding emails, summarizing reports, sitting in meetings to ensure cross-departmental alignment.
Exactly. If a synthetic intelligence takes over the routing, you are suddenly forced to answer a very difficult question.
Yeah.
What unique human value do you actually bring to the table?
It is terrifying, honestly, but it is also incredibly liberating. You are suddenly freed from the bureaucracy to do the complex, creative problem-solving you were actually hired to do in the first place.
Right.
But if a company ignores the shift, what happens?
Dorsey and Botha offer a very stark warning. Implementing AI just to help your current org chart write emails faster is a temporary cost optimization illusion.
It's just a Band-Aid?
Exactly. You might lay off some staff, your margins will look fantastic for 3 or 4 quarters, and then you will hit a wall. If your company is not building a compounding world model of your business and your customer, you will inevitably be crushed by a competitor who built themselves as an intelligence from the ground up.
Yeah.
The AI won't just augment your company, it will reveal what your company actually is at its core.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started by looking at 8 Roman soldiers sharing a mule, constrained by the physical limits of human communication.
A long way from AI.
Yeah. We saw how that biological bottleneck birthed the Prussian general staff, the railroad org charts, and the endless crushing bureaucracy of the modern matrix organization. And now, we are staring at the first viable alternative in 2 millennia. An AI acting as the central nervous system of a global company, allowing humans to stop acting like traffic lights and start acting like creators at the edge.
It is a fundamental evolution of human coordination. And I want to leave the learner with one final thought to mull over as they look at their own industry.
Okay, let's hear it.
Block relies on financial transactions money as the undeniable, honest signal to feed their world model. What is the honest signal in your business? What is a ground truth metric that cannot be faked?
That's a great question.
And if an AI system begins perfectly optimizing for that specific signal, instantly routing resources without any human managers slowing things down, what beautifully inefficient, uniquely human quirks might we accidentally engineer out of our daily work?
That is a phenomenal question to chew on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive, learner. Keep questioning the systems you work in, keep pushing to the edge of your own capabilities, and we will catch you next time.